The greatest empires come and go, for Father Time is undefeated. When NBA Dynasties fall, they leave behind more than just memories of championships and parades. They also leave the challenge of rebuilding. How does a team recover from the loss of all-time greats? Some teams manage to pick up the pieces and return to glory, while others get stuck in the shadows in a never-ending rebuild cycle. In this video, we're looking at how each of the NBA's greatest dynasties handled the aftermath of their reigns. And of course, we gotta start with the franchise that first comes to mind when most people hear the phrase NBA Dynasty. The Chicago Bulls, from the Jordan era to the Derrick Rose emotional roller coaster and the confusing oddity we have today. The 90s Bulls dynasty, defined by Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and two back-to-back three-peats. All of this came crashing down after the glorious 1998 NBA Finals, where MJ announced his second of 3 retirements, which means we don't see him back in an NBA jersey until he's donning a Wizards uniform. But trust me, there's no magic happening here. The Bulls front office decide to quote-unquote rebuild by letting Phil Jackson go and dismantling the core of this roster. What followed was one of the most drastic falls from grace in NBA history, from winning 6 titles in 8 years to being a lottery team almost overnight. The 1998-99 Bulls only won 13 games, and they have the record for the lowest scoring game in the three-point era, when they only put up 49 points on April 10th, 1999 in a huge loss to the Heat, who scored 82 points. For the next decade or so, the Bulls wandered through mediocrity, trying and failing to rebuild through the draft. That is, until Derrick Rose arrived in 2008. Rose, the youngest MVP in NBA history, led the Bulls to the best record in the league in 2011, and it seemed like Chicago was on the verge of another dynasty, but fate unfortunately had other plans. In the first round of the 2012 playoffs against the 76ers, Rose tore his ACL in his left knee on April 28, 2012. This was devastating for the Bulls, but Rose never gave up. He was still able to lead this Bulls team to the playoffs even in 2015, but he ran into the new Cavs Big Three. Healthy or not, Rose was never able to get past LeBron, whether LeBron was playing in Cleveland or Miami. Rose's repeated injuries derailed the team's hope, and by the mid-2010s, the Bulls were once again a team without direction. Post-Rose era, the Bulls tried to get creative with a duo of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, and trying something with Lonzo Ball at the point, but even Lonzo himself ran into knee issues, and of course DeRozan is now on the Kings, but in my opinion they may have gave up on the Jimmy Butler experiment too soon. I don't know if that was a good idea looking back on it, but hindsight is always 20/20. So despite acquiring talent and forming a number of different cores, like Vucevic seemed like he was going to be a breakout center only to kind of peak as a slight all-star, they haven't been able to return to the success they had in the 90s. While the Derrick Rose era was a fleeting glimpse of what could have been, the shadow of Jordan still looms large over the Bulls franchise. On the polar end of dynasty recovery, here's a franchise that knows how to bounce back. The Los Angeles Lakers, the rebuilding purple and gold machine. Rebuilding and rebounding so much so they've been doing it when they were even the Minneapolis Lakers. The Lakers are the masterclass in bouncing back. Their first dynasty, the Minneapolis Lakers, led by George Mikan in the late 40s and early 50s, they won 5 championships in 6 years. After Mikan retired in 1956, the team fell apart. Moving to Los Angeles in 1960, the Lakers struggled to reign at that dominance despite having Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. It wasn't until they traded for Wilt Chamberlain in 1968 that they won their first title in LA in 1972. But this was just the beginning of the Lakers' pattern, collapse and rebuild. After Wilt's era ended, they quickly transitioned into the Showtime Lakers, headlined by Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who led the team to 5 titles in the 80s. However, when Magic retired in 1991 and Kareem had long since hung up his sneakers, the Lakers went through a rough patch in the early 90s, failing to make the playoffs in 1994. Just when it seemed like they were done, they found their way back into dominance with Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. The Kobe-Shaq era brought 3 titles in the early 2000s, but after the Pistons threw a monkey wrench into that duo, it seemed the Lakers were going to be into a giant drama storm, but as history shows, the Lakers weren't down for long. With Kobe leading the way, they won back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010. After Kobe's retirement, the Lakers once again found themselves on the ropes. Enter LeBron James and Anthony Davis. By 2020, the Lakers were back on top, winning another championship. Now currently in 2024, During the LeBron AD era, the Lakers are no longer title favorites or contenders, but they're still playoff worthy, and I think they're going to ride this out until LeBron retires. What happens after that? Who knows? But if history tells us anything, it's that the Lakers will always find a way to rebuild or find a big name in free agency who wants to play for NBA royalty. But of course, the nickname NBA royalty is relative because there is a franchise that has more crowns than even the Lakers. I'm talking the Celtics. After Bill Russell's Celtics dominated the 60s, winning 11 chips in 13 years, the franchise stumbled a bit. Russell retired in 1969. Nice, but it wasn't so nice for the C's. Well, not really. This is the Celtics. John Havlicek had things under control, as he won Finals MVP in 74 and picked up another chip in 76. And when Hondo retired in 78, the Larry Bird era started in 1980, just a few seasons after, so there wasn't much waiting time for another franchise player. Bird transformed the Celtics into a true powerhouse. With Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish, Boston won 3 titles in the 1980s, becoming a part of the league's defining rivalry with the Lakers. However, Bird's back gave out and the team aged. The Celtics entered a long drought, missing the playoffs entirely for several seasons in the late 90s. What the Celtics needed was the cold hard truth, and they got exactly that with the 10th pick of the 1998 NBA draft in Paul Pierce. Fast forward to 2008, after a decade of mediocrity, Boston orchestrated one of the greatest turnarounds in NBA history by bringing in Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to join Paul Pierce. The result? An immediate NBA championship as they captured the 2008 title and returned to the finals in 2010. But after the Big Three era, the Celtics once again struggled. They embarked in a long rebuild, accumulating a ton of draft picks through trades, thanks Brooklyn, and developing young talent. There was glimpses of hope in the Isaiah Thomas era, but maybe they weren't just tall enough to grasp the title there, and even tried a bit with Kyrie Irving. But the true duo that brought the Celtics back was Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They made it to the finals in 2022, only to get struck by a baby-faced assassin, but fast forward to 2024 and the Celtics have returned to the finals and won it. The C's are the most recent NBA champs, beating the Mavs. Now with Tatum and Brown leading the charge, Boston has a real shot to create a new dynasty, with 2 finals appearances in the past 4 years, plus being title favorites again this year. Whether or not this can become a true dynasty remains to be seen, but the future certainly is bright in Beantown. Speaking of bright futures, it's time to talk about the Spurs, from the big fundamental to the big question mark. The Spurs are the epitome of long-term success. After drafting Tim Duncan in 1997, they became a perennial contender for many decades, winning 5 championships between 1999 and 2014. However, after that 5th title in 2014, the decline began. Duncan retired in 2016, and while Kawhi Leonard was supposed to be the heir to the Spurs throne, his injury thanks to Zaza Pachulia kinda gave the Spurs a tough choice to make. They traded him in 2018 and threw the franchise into turmoil. Kawhi was a Raptor for a bit, but the Spurs were in a mess. However, they did try to stay competitive. They did make the playoffs with veterans like LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan, but it's clear that this wasn't a championship team. By the time the 2020 playoffs rolled around, the Spurs' playoff streak came to an end. That's 22 consecutive seasons of making the postseason. They've become a lottery team since then, but now at least there's new hope in San Antonio. After winning the lottery in 2023, the Spurs landed Victor Wembanyama, one of the most highly anticipated prospects in recent memory. The future of the franchise now rests on Wembanyama's shoulders. And while it's still too early to tell, the Spurs have a history of turning top draft picks into dynasties. Can they do it again? Only time will let us know. And last but not least, we have one of the most recent NBA dynasties with the Golden State Warriors. Are they ready to rebuild or rebound? Because at first, it seemed like the Golden State Warriors dynasty would have ended when Kevin Durant left in 2019 and Klay Thompson suffered back-to-back devastating injuries, but in true dynasty fashion, they weren't done yet. They retooled, and in 2022, the Warriors shocked the world by winning their 4th championship in 8 years, with Steph Curry proving he could still carry the team. However, the glow of that title didn't last long. In the summer of 2024, Klay Thompson left for the Mavericks, creating a massive hole in the team's lineup. Now, with Curry aging and Thompson gone, the Warriors face an uncertain future. Can they rebound, or is it time for a rebuild? Prior to the 2022 ring, there were rumors looming that this was finally the rebuilding stage instead of retooling, but the Warriors bounced back and proved that so long as a healthy Steph Curry is on the roster, they can compete. With Klay Thompson off the roster and Curry getting even older, this question has come up even stronger, but the answer may still be the same despite the amount of time that has passed. That answer being, as long as Curry is on the roster, there's always hope. And of course, there's always crazy free agency rumors like the idea that in a few seasons we could see Giannis on this team, but slightly more realistically, the Warriors might be eyeing Jimmy Butler in some type of trade. Of course, at this point it's all speculation, but what is not speculation is that the Warriors need to do something if they want to go back to their former glory. They can't just sit and hope. So this wraps up how these NBA dynasties tried to rebuild after their championship runs ended. Some found new stars, others fell into obscurity, but the quest to reclaim the throne never really ends. Let me know which franchise you think has the best future moving forward. Don't forget to dunk on that like button and subscribe with notifications turned on. I'm Rebound Rewind, and I'll fast forward to you later.